telegraphs their intentions. And mankind's greatest enemy, the World Economic Forum, has issued another virus warning, and this time it's a virus that's capable of shutting down electric grids around the world. Here's Candace Owens' take on it. She had some thoughts about it. Then we'll play you Klaus Schwab's comments on it after that. Take a listen.
What would you do if they brought the power grid down? And by they, I mean if the government purposefully brought the power grid down. And I'm not asking that question for fun. I'm asking that question because the World Economic Forum is predicting that a cyber pandemic, you can look this up, they've been running exercises about it this year, is inevitable. You're probably saying, what is a cyber pandemic? It doesn't make any sense. Like, what are we even talking about? Well, first and foremost, the reason I'm even paying attention to the World Economic Forum and their exercises is because they notoriously, in 2019, ran an exercise for a coronavirus pandemic that oddly all became true. I mean, without one slight difference. They said that the coronavirus was going to escape from a wet market in South America. Of course, when the coronavirus swept the world in 2020, they said that it escaped from a wet market in China. You can still look that up, by the way. That's not a conspiracy theory. They simulated that coronavirus pandemic. It was the World Economic Forum in collaboration with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, in collaboration with Johns Hopkins University. And the website is still up, and they say, the coronavirus pandemic is inevitable. And then, boom, it happened the very next year. So people say it's a conspiracy theory to believe that they knew that the coronavirus pandemic was going to happen. You don't have to believe it was a conspiracy theory, or you can believe it wasn't a conspiracy theory. It's up to you. I don't really care. The point is that they made the prediction, they called it inevitable, and then it happened immediately. So for me personally, that signals to me that I should probably pay attention the next time the World Economic Forum makes a prediction and calls it inevitable. And lo and behold, they are predicting that a coronavirus pandemic, a cyber pandemic, is going to happen, and that it is once again inevitable. So if you look into the exercise that they have run this year, I believe they ran it in July. They've been meeting and talking about the cyber pandemic, what it would look like. Essentially, their idea is that they're going to have to sanitize the internet because a bug, think of it as like a coronavirus for your computer, is going to sweep globally. And the only way they're going to be able to stop this bug from infecting everything is to effectively shut down the internet, right? And they were talking about bringing down the power grid in an effort to do this. So imagine the government bringing down the power grid, and you would not have access to anything that required an electrical charge.
So think about this. By the way, how long has it been? A week or two since we talked about the news story where U.S. senators were issued satellite phones just in case some disruptive activity happens?
Yeah, so we talked about that last week, and now this week, prepare yourselves for the grid to be shut down through a virus.
Yeah, no big deal. It's just we're just wargaming it, folks. But as Candace said, these guys, they always tell you what they're going to do. They wargamed the pandemic right before it happened. When I say, if the World Economic Forum says it, listen, I mean it, because they tell you what they're working on, and then that just happens to occur to the entire planet's population. That's how these guys work. And you're not going to have, they're not, the U.S. senators, most of which aren't really elite, but the people who are in the so-called elite, who have got their sat phones and they're prepared, they've got their Generac, full home recovery and power backup systems in play. Like, they're not going to suffer whatsoever. But we will if this happens. Like, that is crazy. Crazy to think of what this would look like if a cyber pandemic, I love they're calling it a pandemic. Everything's a pandemic now. It's a pandemic of stupidity out there is what it is. But these guys will be absolutely fine if that happens. But again, before we kind of break down what we think it would look like, I mean, how many times have they telegraphed, Tom, what they're talking about doing and then doing? This is like their MO.
This is totally their MO. And the reason why they're using the word pandemic, remember, we always talk about how the left and the Marxist revolutionaries use words very specifically. They're saying a cyber pandemic. They're saying that because everybody's frame of reference is the COVID pandemic. So everybody has been conditioned that pandemic is a bad thing and has a potential to shut down the world. So it's not a coincidence they're saying cyber pandemic. That being the first. And yes, every time that we're faced with something that could trigger a global reset, the World Economic Forum has already wargamed it. They were wargaming a pandemic as early as 2007.
Yeah.
All the way up until when the pandemic hit. And what I find very strange, you alluded this before, we were just playing the video before we came on about how CBS News is reporting that there could be an attack, a cyber attack by, guess who? Domestic terrorists.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're setting the table.
Everything's weaved in there. They really are. They're setting the table.